In this video, we're going to take a look at what happens behind the scenes when you do an image upload or a file upload in a UX component. So you can see that we have a simple UX component that has an image capture button. This particular component is bound to a SQL database, and if we go to our controls here, we see that we have two image controls, one called image file name and one called thumb file name, and we're doing an image upload when we click this button over there. So you can see the image upload is defined there. Currently it's set to a mobile image upload, which means it's going to use the camera if we're on a mobile device, or it's going to use the camera simulator if we're on a desktop device. And we're uploading to the field called image file name, which is a character field. So that means we're going to be storing the file name of the image in the this field in the database, and then storing the physical file in a folder on the server called image upload tutorial. And then you can see that we've also specified we'd like to create thumbnails. We'd like the thumbnail to also be a physical file in the same folder, image upload tutorial, and we'd like to attach a suffix to the file name. So also, because we're using the mobile camera simulator over here, the image that gets created is going to have a name that we don't have any control over. So first let's go here and actually run through this once, and then go back and take a look at what's happening behind the scenes. So we're going to go now to live preview, and if we before we actually do the live preview, if we go to the folder on the server to the image upload tutorial, we can see that currently there's no files in that folder. And if we also go to our database over here, we can see that if I do a refresh right now, there are no records in the database. So let's go ahead now and add a new record. So we'll go over here to fast preview, and we'll leave the image name field. Well, actually we'll go here and we'll type and say test, and this is my test image. Then we'll go ahead now and capture an image. So I'm going to go and capture this image called 43001. And now basically, if I were to go and look at the folder on the server, we'll still see that there's nothing there, because the file will not be written to the server until the record is actually committed when I press the submit button. So since I haven't yet pressed the submit button, the file hasn't been written to the server. This record that I'm entering has not yet been committed to the table. If we go here and do a refresh, we can see that there are still no records in the table. But the image itself has been uploaded to the server, and the image is just sitting on the server right now in temporary session storage. And only when I press the submit button will the binary data that is sitting in temporary session storage be extracted from its temporary location and then physically written to the file on disk. So that means that if the user never presses the submit button and abandons this record, the data that is sitting on the server will just go away gracefully at the time the session expires. So now let's go ahead and click the submit button. So I'm going to click the submit button now, and now we can see that the SQL has been executed. We can see that since we're using the camera, an arbitrarily GUID file name was assigned to the data over there. So now if we go to the folder now and look in the folder, now we actually do see that a physical file has been created, and the thumbnail has been created with the underbar thumb suffix associated with it. And if we go to the table, the SQL table now, we'll see that a record has been created over there. And if we look at the record itself, we can see that the actually it's easier to go to the form view here. We can see that there's a GUID file name that has been used. So let's pause now and pick it up in the next video, where we talk about how you can control this file name. So we're continuing now our discussion about what happens behind the scenes when you do an image upload or a file upload in a UX component. And we've been looking at the image upload done using the camera simulator, and since the camera simulator doesn't allow you to specify what file name is going to be used on the server, these the files that were created have an arbitrary GUID name that was assigned by the mobile device when it took the picture, or in the case of the HTML5 simulator, since we're working on the desktop right now using the HTML5 camera simulator, the GUID was just arbitrarily assigned. But in a real application, you might want more control over these file names here. So you might want to replace this with some other file name. So let's assume now that what you want to do is at the time that you capture the image, so let's go here and create a new record, and we're going to go now and capture an image using the camera simulator. And now let's assume that that I'm going to type in some value here called, say, my image, and I'll just type in some arbitrary description. This is the description. And let's say that what I'd like to do is, when I press the submit button, is when I write this data to the table and create the physical files for the uploaded image, I'd like to use this as the file name for the image rather than the GUID. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to put some code in the server-side event where the data is written to the database. So you can see that in the after dialog validate event over here, we're currently calling into server-side action scripting to save the record to the database. So what we'd like to do is, after this code has run, so in other words over here, if we start putting in our own code over here, we'd like to check to see whether the record was successfully saved to the database. And then what we'd like to do is change the name of the file name from the meaningless GUID to some meaningful name. So first of all, before we do that, let's go here and examine some of the data that is made available to us by this action. So I'm going to put my cursor inside the line and then go action JavaScript, action scripting, and say show variables exposed by this action. So the variables that I care about are this one, the record was saved, which is either true or false. So this is going to tell me whether the record was successfully saved. So let me copy that to the clipboard and then just paste that in. And then let's go back here again and click show variables. And then the other variables that I care about are towards the bottom here, are these two. This tells me what the primary key was of the record that was just either inserted or edited. So let's cancel this, and then I'll just go here and paste in those two values so that I have them available to me as I start writing code. So what I'd like to do now is write some code that is going to check to see, first of all, was the record successfully saved? Then if so, I'm going to basically do a query and find the record that was just either edited or entered, and then find out what file name was assigned on the server, and then go ahead and modify that. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing with our tutorial on behind the scenes on an image upload or a file upload in the UX component, and we've now added some code which we'll explain as we debug through it on how we're going to change the file name of the uploaded image on disk, and also that is stored in the table. So let's go back to live preview now and upload another image. So here we go, we're back in live preview, and let's go ahead now and add a new record. So we'll click the new record button, and then if we go now to our image upload folder, we can see that at this point there are just two images here because we've at this point only created one record. And also if we go to our SQL table, we can see also that there's currently only one record in the table. So let's go ahead now and click new record, so that we're going to start creating a new record. And this name over here, I'll say image 1, is going to be the string that we use to physically name the image. So we'll go here and say this is the description for image 1, and then we'll go ahead and do an image capture using the camera simulator. So we'll just go there and choose that image. So now the image now at this point has been uploaded to the server. It's sitting on the server in temporary session storage, but it has not yet been committed to the database, and it has not yet been written to the file on the server. So if I go and look at this directory now, it still only has 2 files in it. So let's go ahead now and press the submit button and then debug through the code. So now we press the submit button, and you can see now we're inside the after validate event handler, and this flag now record was saved is true. So that means that if we go back to our database now and do a refresh here, we can see that the new record exists. And if we switch now to say form view, we can see that the file name that has been stored in the table is the GUID file name. But if we go to and if we go here to our upload folder and look here at the images, we can see now that there are 4 images here, and the 2 new images have been saved into files on disk using this GUID, so D86, which matches D86 there. So now basically we're going to be debugging into our code where we're going to rename that file. So let's step through the code now. So the first thing that we do is we write a SQL statement that's going to select the ID, that's the primary key of the record we just created, the image name, which was the name that we specified we'd like to use for the file names, image file name, thumb file name, from image upload tutorial, that's the name of our table, where ID, which is the primary key, is equal to some argument called PK. So now we're going to go ahead and create a SQL arguments object, and we're going to open up our connection. And whenever we do any alpha DAO operation, we always return a logical value, true or false, to tell us if there was an error. If there was an error, the error text will be inside the cn.resultset .callResult.txt. This code is wrong. It should say cn.callResult.txt. But there was no error. So now we're going to basically create a an argument called PK, which to match this value over there, and we're going to set it equal to the primary key value. So there's the primary key value, and it's in this variable RTC primary key table, which you recall we saw was one of the values that was returned by the action script. So let's carry on now with our code, and now we're going to basically execute the SQL statement. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now to step through the code, and we're now going to execute our SQL select statement, passing in the SQL statement and also the arguments, and then we look at flag. Flag is true, which means that the command executed successfully. So again, we basically can skip over this line here. Again, this is an error. This should be cn.callResults.txt. So I apologize about that. So now that we've executed the query, let's get the result set. So we dim result set as SQL : result set, and then we get the result set from the connection object. So now we have a result set, and then we're going to read out of this result set image name. So that's image 1, which is what we typed into the field. File name, which is the file name that was stored in the record, and you can see there's the GUID value for the file name, and then thumb file name, which is the file name for the thumbnail that was created, and again it's using the GUID. So now we go and free the result set because we no longer need that. And now we basically create 2 new strings, 2 new variables called file name 2 and thumb name 2, based on the original file name. So you can see we're using image1 and then image1 underbar thumb. So these are the file name 2 and thumb file name 2 represent the file names that we would like to use. So we want to now replace the physical file on disk with these new files. So now we're going to check to see, does file name exist? It does exist. Therefore we're going to go and rename it. So now if we go now and look on the folder on disk, we can see that the thumbnail hasn't yet been renamed, but image1 has been renamed. And then let's go ahead now and then rename the second file name. So now we've renamed both file names. You can see that now we have image1 and image1 underbar thumbnail. And now the final step is to actually update the value in the record in the database. So here's our SQL statement. Over here we're going to do an update, and we're going to set image file name to an argument, file name 1, and then thumb file name to another argument, where the primary key matches the primary key. So now we're going to go add 2 new arguments and then execute our query, which is true. So now what we can do is go back to the database, which is over here, and then do a refresh, and we can see now that the physical file name that has been stored in the image file name field and the thumbnail field has been updated to our new file name. And then let's carry on. So now again we check for errors. There's no errors. We close the connection down, run, and we're done. So we've basically updated the data in the server and updated the files, the physical files that are stored on disk. So what we've seen in this video is basically what happens when an image or a file is uploaded, how the image is stored in temporary storage on the server and then is only committed to the database at the time the record is actually committed, and then how you can use XBasic in the after dialog validate event to manipulate the file that is stored on disk and also to manipulate the value that is stored in the record. Thanks very much for watching.